Do you want to be wealthy? If you do, you have to stop looking rich. Let me explain. A lot of people are playing the wrong game. They will buy luxury items like a Ferrari, like maybe a Prada handbag, buy maybe a Chanel suit, but it doesn't mean that they're wealthy. If you're on a 200k salary, but you spend 200k as well, you are not saving anything for your future self there, and you're not investing and you don't have any assets. So even if you may seem rich to people, like you're driving a very fancy car around the place, it doesn't mean that you're wealthy. And this is where the average person falls into this mindset. They think if they have luxury items, if they live in an amazing apartment in some skyscraper in London, right, it means that they're wealthy and that they'll have respect. That is not true, because one does not equate to the other a lot of the time. They might have bought things on credit cards, that person who's wearing that Chanel suit, or they might be swimming in debt, or they may not have any investments or savings for themselves. So the difference between rich and wealth is actually very vast, and it's something that we need to understand as a community so that we can build ourselves up for the future in a better way. So Morgan Housel wrote the book, The Psychology of Money, during the pandemic, right? And I recently picked it back up again and listened to it on an audiobook. I'll drop the link down below if you're curious, right? But it is such a fascinating read because he really delves into what it's like to be wealthy and the understanding and the mindset of a wealthy person rather than someone who constantly spends money on trying to look wealthy. So my first point is wealth is saving, not spending. So true money is what's sitting in your bank account or sitting in your investments. It's not what's spent. So if you look at Warren Buffett, he's lived in that same house for bloody decades, right? Or also that janitor that he speaks about in The Psychology of Money. That was a janitor for a lot of his life, but he was consistent with investing for decades. And he landed with this amount of money when he died, of which he donated a lot to charity. So true wealth is often invisible. So when you think about your own life, how do you view money? Do you really feel like it is a tool to just buy more stuff? Or are you trying to build yourself up and build assets? Like maybe you're saving for a house, and good on you if you are. It's really hard to do, but you will get there. Or are you someone who feels like they can never reach that goal of buying a house? So instead they buy more shoes or they buy more clothes because they know that they can spend £50 on that. Does it come down to lack of self-belief or lack of self-confidence or lack of self-assurance that you don't feel like you maybe deserve or that can reach that goal to buy a house? Often it comes down to our mindset and what people have been telling us over time and what you absorb, okay? And also I find this interesting that the people that you surround yourself with, they can also affect your mentality, you know? So if you're hanging around with people that are maybe unemployed for a long time, who maybe aren't bothered about their life, who don't have any financial goals, that will start to brush off on you. So who do you surround yourself with? You know, even at work, you know, are you surrounding yourself with very bitchy, gossipy people? Or are you surrounding yourself with people who are like super driven and motivated and want the best for their life? Because you will start to take on those traits and you really have to understand, you know, where your values lie and how do you want to be as a person? Because that will also make you think about how you spend your money too. If you're constantly trying to impress people with whatever cash that you have and you're going into credit card debt, you've not got the right mindset there, but you can change it, you know. It may be subconscious that, hey, you're just buying clothes, you know, all the time because you want to look good, because you want to feel respected in your workplace. Break it all down and what is it really stemming from? And then try and fix that core problem that you're having inside. The next point I want to chat through is, are you thinking about your future self? If you're currently getting paid £3,000 a month, okay, and let's say every month you spend £600 on takeaways, but you're not saving any money or investing any money for your future self, okay? Let's say, for example, even if you split that, even if you just invest £300 of that £600 takeaway fund every month, right? And if you put it in something like an S&P 500, which is what I personally do, look into investing if you're not sure. But if you did this for the next 20 years of £300 every month, putting it into that bucket, this is how much money you would have, okay? It's absolutely mental because the power of compound interest is on your side there. So you're building up interest. The more money that you put in, you've got a bigger pot of money and it's growing more interest as, you know, the longer you leave it in. So it's not necessarily that you don't have the money. You might be spending it on takeaways, you know, and £600 on takeaways. I know people who've done that, okay, and they just fall into this thing where they're busy at work, they get a takeaway because they're tired, they don't want to cook. You know, they have to stay late, so they get a takeaway to the office, you know. They want to go out with friends, so they eat out and spend an awful lot of money on food. What is it for yourself? How much do you guys spend on takeaways and eating out every single month? Could you cut that in half and put the half of that into an investment account and grow your wealth for your future? And then maybe, hey, you don't have to work so long. Maybe you can retire early. Or maybe you can live in a place that's less expensive than the city that I live in, like London. And you can kind of change your life with the money that you have, so money can create freedom for yourself. You can live a life of luxury, on the amount of money that you have. You just have to delay the gratification that you want. So it's how you want to see your life, and what are the values that are really important for you in your life? Is it freedom of your time? Is it freedom to travel? Is it autonomy about what you get to do and what you get to say every day for work? Is it culture? Is it learning about things around you? What do you want from your life? And from there, money can really be a tool to achieve that life that you want. So you really got to step back and understand that it's a long-term game, It's a long-term strategy to build the life that you want, rather than having these short-term wins of spending, overspending on stuff that you already have in your wardrobe, and building up things that in the long term you're just going to throw away. So understand, where do your values lie and what kind of life do you want to live for yourself in the future? The difference between a rich person and a wealthy person are vast, okay? So a rich person may be on a high income. Let's say he's on 100 grand salary, right? And he gets paid 5 grand a month every month into his bank account, right? However, if he's spending 3 grand a month on his living expenses, accommodation, he's got a really cool flat, right? And let's say he spends £1,000 on food, takeaways, restaurants. He lives luxuriously, right? And let's say he spends another grand on clothes, on his car, on frivolous things. Soon enough, his money goes down to zero. So even though he's on a super high salary, it doesn't mean that he's wealthy, because he's not saving any money. He's not investing any money. He is renting. He doesn't own an asset such as a house or an apartment. If he loses his job, is in a really serious situation there, because he's lived in such a high, luxurious lifestyle, but not created any buffer for himself. So if you think about your own life, are you doing a similar thing? You may not be getting paid 5-6 grand a month, right? But if you're getting paid 2 grand a month or 3 grand a month, how are you utilizing that money? Do you have an emergency fund for yourself? And if not, you can start right now. You cut back on clothes, you cut back on the takeaways, you cut back on the restaurants, right? If you don't have an emergency fund, it is an emergency. Your car might break down so you can't get to work. You need to call a plumber because your toilet is fucking leaking all over the place. And whatever your situation is, you really have to understand, okay, what if something fucking terrible is to happen? What would I do if I don't have my salary? It's really important to have that buffer and emergency fund, but also to look to your future self as well. Do you want to be working until you're 70? I mean, I know I don't, right? And even though I'm living in an expensive area like London, I am very cautious and conscious that I every month save the same amount, because I know if I'm consistent with that compound interest in the background, that I'm doing myself a massive favor in 20 years time, right? Whenever I want to dip into my investments, it will be there and it will have grown to a big sum. And the difference between a rich person, let's say who's on a high salary but maybe spends everything on luxury stuff, a wealthy person is someone who has financial stability, is someone who has financial freedom. They may have the option to retire early, or maybe they just want to keep on working because it's important to have a purpose. You can't just not do anything with your life, right? But they might have the option that, hey, maybe they want to go work for charity in a third world country. That, hey, maybe they want to be an artist and they just paint every weekend and that's what they do. And they have that pot of money there for stability, for freedom, for a choice. Money gives you choices. So focus more on wealth rather than trying to look rich. Wealth is things like investing, saving for your future, buying more assets for yourself. Whereas rich people, they can sometimes fall into just buying liabilities, just buying luxury items, not having enough savings for their future because they're living in the right now. There is something called quiet wealth versus loud spending. And this is really interesting when you think of the wealth versus rich dynamic as well. So if we stick with Mark Zuckerberg, right, he is fairly basic t-shirt jeans kind of person, but also someone that is a little bit closer to home. So there was a YouTuber called Nate O'Brien, who I really look up to because he made absolute feckin' millions having a personal finance channel just like this. I am not a millionaire, but one day, hopefully. But he was so interesting because even though he had loads of money coming in from AdSense, he actually did up his van and lived in the woods for weeks or months on end. And I remember this interview that he had with Graham Stephan, who's another YouTuber, of course. And Graham was just like, why aren't you making more videos to make more money? You're on a bit of a gold mine here. And Nate's response was just like, I don't need more money. I have enough. And even that simple sentiment of I have enough, we can really fall into this thing where we're always wanting more. If you think about it yourself, are you currently focusing on what you're missing or what you're grateful that you have right now? If you're constantly wanting more stuff and constantly buying more things to try and feel happy, you're never going to feel happy because you always want more. So that simple line is like, I have enough, I am enough. You get to a point where you're like, I don't need any more money. That is an amazing place to be, and that's what wealth is the money you don't see in people's bank accounts, okay? One of our biggest assets is time. So how are you using your time now, and how can you spend your money in a way that you can buy time in the future? Even something silly, like I recently bought one of those robot hoovers, and I was so skeptical about them for so long, but now I'm like, oh my God, this is mind blown. I'm saving so much time. So for example, I would spend about an hour every week just hoovering around my flat because I've got a cat and there's just hairs everywhere. If you've got a pet, you know what it's like, right? So now all I need to do is press a button and the Hoover does it for me. So in that hour, I genuinely write my scripts. I genuinely think about ideas for this channel, and I genuinely do work. So it's like I've bought an hour of time. I'll pop the link down below if you're curious, but I would honestly swear by them. Of course, you can do other things in that time. Even if it's not work related, you can sit with your partner and have a deep chat in that hour. You could maybe paint your nails. You could do a nice facial for yourself at home. It's like you're buying an extra hour if you've got someone else doing the work for you. And this is often called outsourcing, even though it's a robot, right? But sometimes I do it for editing on this channel as well. I've got a lovely few editors. Hey guys, how's it going? And they sometimes edit my videos because in that other time that I would have spent editing my own videos, I can then record and make more for you guys. So it's about utilizing your time and understanding what works best for you. So if you feel like you're working yourself to the bone and you're causing burnout, what are ways that you can work smarter for yourself so that you can, of course, look after your health, but also look after your bank balance too. If you found this video helpful, I'll pop this one up here, which has similar content to it, which will help you on your financial well-being journey. I tend to post 2 videos a week, so if you're curious about improving your money habits and saving a bit more and being better with your money, hopefully you can subscribe. That'll help me out. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.